Speak Up for Women is an advocacy group seeking to ensure sex-based rights for women and girls in New Zealand. Now, they've raised concerns about the New Zealand police guidelines for conducting strip searches. The guidelines specify that the searcher must be of the same gender identity as the person being searched, rather than their biological sex. SUFW argues that this policy does not align with legislation, which refers to sex-based protections in such searches. Now, they highlight that in urgent situations, an officer of a different gender identity may be present, but out of view, which they believe raises legal and safety concerns. Spokeswoman for Speak Up for Women, Suzanne Levy, joins me now. Suzanne, good afternoon.
Hello, thanks for having me on today.
Look, and lovely to talk to you. I believe you've written to the Police Minister, Mark Mitchell. Can you walk us through, and I know I touched on it there, but can you walk us through the major concerns with how this stands at the moment?
Yeah, so this was brought to our attention actually with the customs guidelines, which are very similar. And both the customs and police guidelines are controlled, or should be controlled, with legislation. So there's an act of Parliament called the Search and Surveillance Act 2012, and it covers, as you would expect from the name, it covers the processes and everything and regulations around searching. In the case of customs, it could be anybody really, and police, anyone who's sort of taken into custody needs searching. So, and their guidelines. So initially the customs ones were brought to our attention, and we had a look at that, and then we realised that the police ones were just as bad. So basically, the Act says things like a person, very simple, a person must be searched by a person of the same sex. That's pretty much what it says, and then it talks about if another person has to be involved or in the room, that person should also be of the same sex. So it's not ambiguous. It's not. There's nothing to sort of think about really. But then when you read the guidelines for both customs and for police, they both talk about gender identity exclusively. They don't mention sex at all. So right through the guidelines, when they discuss all the scenarios and the situations, it's gender identity, gender identity, gender identity. It also goes as far as to say that a transgender person can choose the gender identity of the person searching them. So that puts potentially a female police officer in the position of having to strip search a male, which wouldn't normally be something that would happen. And it's not covered with the legislation. So we wrote to Minister Costello, who's the Minister for Customs, and we wrote to Minister Mitchell, who's Minister for Police. And we haven't received a reply for either of them, but we have also written to the Chief Executive or Comptroller of Customs, who's Christine Stevenson, and we've written to Richard Chambers, who's the new Commissioner for Police. Yes. And we have heard back from the Commissioner of Police almost immediately, and he has he forwarded our request and included us in the reply, or in that message, basically asking for it to be looked into and for him to be advised on it. Okay. So he's treated it really, because what we've said is that we've said to the Chief Executive Customs and the Commissioner of Police that they have 6 weeks to withdraw and replace the guidelines with guidelines that match the legislation.
The Surveillance Act.
So, and if they don't, then we will go to a declaratory judgment, or we'll seek a declaratory judgment, which is where we make a claim to the High Court, and we say that in this particular instance, the law is not being upheld. This is illegal, and that's what we would be seeking.
So, Susan, I actually spoke with Mark Mitchell in the last hour regarding some other issues, and I brought this up with him, and I said I was speaking with you, and he said that he was more than happy to see you. So
that's good. Well, he needs to respond to our email. Yeah. So hopefully he will do that. We did ask for a meeting with him.
When did you contact him?
I think his message was on the 2nd of March, I believe.
Okay, so we're only on the 4th, but I get it.
Yeah, so it's not and that's not unusual for a minister. Now, you have to excuse the noise. I'm sitting in my car and it's just started to rain.
That's fine.
Really, really hard.
Oh, wow.
So
that's okay.
So the other thing that's interesting.
Yep, keep going.
Yeah. Well, this lines up. We have a petition in progress at the moment. It closes tomorrow night. It's on. You can access it via our website, which is speakupforwomen.nz, and it's a parliamentary-based petition, and it's asking for the meaning of sex to be clarified in the Human Rights Act. And this is a really good example of where sex. We all know what sex means, but somebody is able to interpret it to mean gender identity, which is just nonsense. Gender identity is entirely subjective. It can change. You know, if you look at the Stats New Zealand definition of gender identity, it's completely loose. It's completely self-prescribed or described or whatever you want to call it. It can change. It's social. It's not everybody has one. You know, it's a made-up thing. You know.
Yeah.
And there's no place for that sort of thing in our legislation, which is why our legislation says sex.
Yes.
So this is a massive. It's an activist has got in there at some stage and changed this. And this is what
I was going to say, Suzanne, when I mean, I know you've seen this and also at Customs. When was it changed, or when did they put in gender identity?
Well, it's potentially been in there for a few years. I think the police one may have been there since 2018. But, you know, we're not looking at these things all the time. We get a lot of stuff passed on to us, and we do, you know, we're a volunteer group, so we look into what we can. Fortunately, somebody picked up the Customs one and sent it to us, and then from there we got to the police one. But, you know, we come across stuff all the time where the Human Rights Act is referenced and it says that it includes, you know, protection for gender and gender identity. It simply doesn't. The Human Rights Act does not mention gender or gender identity. It talks about sex as a protected characteristic. So it's just, you know, it's something we've been battling for a long time across all sorts of different government departments with their policies and procedures that just sort of they put their own take on the law. They write it as how they would like it to be rather than how it actually is. So we've seen so much of that.
Yeah, no, and have there been cases where these guidelines have caused like issues in real life policing situations? Because I asked the minister how many trans police we have, and I know that's not the point. The point is it shouldn't be, you know, it shouldn't be in that guideline or in law, but he said, I don't know. And I went, well, and apparently my listeners text and saying they know of 2. So
there are, there are definitely some transgender women police officers.